Greetings, beloveds. This is Amy Caryn Johnson, the Earth Channel. And I have been sharing with you over the past couple of weeks the reasons why I incorporate the sidereal zodiac, the main reason being that that is actually where the stars are in the sky, with the 64 hexagrams or gates of the I Ching as they are shown in human design, which is a type of astrology as well. Usually in human design, they overlay the 64 hexagrams with the tropical zodiac. And in 1987, when Ra Uru Hu channeled this knowledge of human design into the world, excuse the sound, my dog is chewing on a bone right now. Hopefully it won't be too distracting, but I really don't want to put him in the kennel right now. So when Ra channeled this knowledge into the world, he had these gates overlaid with the tropical zodiac in such a way, as I showed you last week, where the 8 gates of the heart center, or as they call it, the G center, I prefer heart. It's the diamond in the middle, and in the graphic I will be showing you, it'll be yellow because it is defined in that chart. So those 8 gates are aligned, generally speaking, with the equinoxes, solstices, and the 4 points in between those, as shown in the Wheel of the Year or the 8 pagan holidays. And I believe that that alignment with those equinoxes and solstices is not accidental. That is, I think that's why they used whatever intelligence this came from, the tropical zodiac at that time. So, for example, the 25th gate is symbolic or generally aligned with the spring equinox, as we observe the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere at least. And in the tropical zodiac with the 12 signs, that would normally be with the sign of Aries. However, I overlay it with the sidereal zodiac, which is currently with the sign of Pisces for that spring equinox instead. And so I don't want to get too much into that again to repeat myself. I know that a lot of you found that those concepts to be a bit advanced, and hopefully you still got something out of it. But I did just want to put my theory out there, basically publish it on YouTube and Facebook before someone else beat me to it, because I haven't seen this anywhere else. I don't think anyone else that I know of right now, unless you got it from me, is using this particular system where it is overlaid in this way. And so I want to today try to break it down a little bit more into the ways that I like to use human design. And because I'm leaving it overlaid with these equinoxes and solstices, you can use any free chart generator and you will be using that system because, like I said, that is the way that it was originated. If you ever do find a chart generator of some kind, for example, Maya Mechanics Imaging has the software where they do overlay the tropical zodiac and those 12 signs with those gates, then that's where it will differ from what I am showing you in the graphics that I share with you. But most of the time, all you see are the gates and the body graph, as they call it, with the 9 centers. And so I'm not going to necessarily teach you human design because there are a lot of sources, both free and otherwise, that will do that for you. I will be more than happy to offer you all readings and offer you any insights into questions that you may have. I am currently not getting a lot of interest, even though I have offered those for free. And I also offer readings with sidereal and Vedic astrology as well, which I think is best used for timing in particular. Human design, on the other hand, is best used for understanding who we are, how we best make decisions, and how we interact with other people at a very quick glance. And so there are ways that you can combine those two, but generally speaking, I tend to look at one or the other depending upon the question or the focus that is desired. So today what I'd like to do, since everyone's readings are going to be different, everyone's charts are going to be different, everyone's transits and the way they affect them are going to be different, even though there are some energies that will be more universal. For example, as this is coming out, we are approaching Beltane, and that is when the sun aligns with the second hexagram. And the second hexagram is made up of all yin lines. I mentioned this in my last video. Like I said, I don't want to repeat too much, but the yin lines are all broken, two pieces basically, whereas the yang lines are solid all the way across. And what I do want to talk about today that affects everyone, and it's basically the foundation for, basically the beauty of this human design system. The 64 hexagrams represent all the different combinations of 6 lines in various, combinations and permutations of yin and yang lines. And they actually make a perfect, parallel, basically, with the amino acids. And I'm not an expert in genetics, that kind of stuff, but I do know that there are the first, second, and third baselines for all the different amino acids. And with those three, each of those three are basically associated with the first 2 lines of a hexagram, then the second base is the second 2 lines, and the third base is the third set of 2 lines in a hexagram. So they're basically 64 amino acids. Now, I know that there are some other different types of chemical compounds, molecules, that are sometimes perhaps called amino acids, even though they don't fall into this category. But the ones I'm talking about, I'm sorry, I don't have a great reference for you. I have looked on Wikipedia and found a set of them there with those different combinations, basically. And I don't want to get into that too much. It's a little too cerebral for me. I'm looking more toward the foundation of human design and those 64 hexagrams as they represent the different combinations of yin and yang and how they are represented in the body graph. So when you see how those 64 gates, they translate to gates, come together in that body graph. They are in different numbers within 9 centers. I have a whole series of videos, so if you go to my YouTube channel or my Facebook page or group, you can look back into, I had a series of 9 videos a couple of months ago about those different centers and what they mean when they're open, undefined, versus defined, which is when they are colored in. And that basically speaks to how we interact with different people. And so in some ways, when you overlay 2 people's charts in human design, you come up with a third person. And that third person shows you basically the nature of your relationship with each other. You can also do multiple people all together, and that will show you how that group interacts. I specialize more so in the one-on-one relationships and how those work best together. And, people are always going to come together for a reason. Oftentimes it's how they are alike, and usually those are the most sustainable relationships. But sometimes, maybe even oftentimes, we are attracted to different people who represent something that we don't necessarily have in our charts. And that can start out as a source of attraction, and it can then evolve sometimes into a point of contention, because as much as we are driven to seek out and find different people, diversity, people who are different from us, we also have trouble accepting that fully, like how it plays out differently from the ways that we function best. And so, getting back to what I intended to offer you today, of the foundation of this system and the different combinations of yin and yang, they're basically representing duality and the matrix in a lot of ways. Maya is another way of putting that, this sort of dream world. Now, I do believe that we have a kind of reality here. It's not all just fake. But what is somewhat deceptive about it is that in this matrix, in this Maya, this dream world, whatever you want to call it, in this reality, third dimensional, we are under the illusion that there is such a thing as separation. As separation from source, from love, excuse the sound, and from being connected to the universal source of all that is. In reality, we never lose that connection, but we have chosen to create this reality. Our divine selves have chosen for us to enter this particular kind of reality where we perceive that perception, even though it isn't fully true, so that we can sort of separate out these different little aspects of source, aspects of this reality, and find how they can be expressions of that love, of that universal unconditional love, and how they can come together. And I know that's a challenge, but that's the challenge that we came here to embark upon. And so, as much as sometimes we might curse it, we might despise it, we might wish just to move on to another dimension, another reality, heaven, whatever you want to call it, I don't necessarily believe that the fifth dimension is full immersion into that source. It is just the next level up, the next step toward being aware that there is a connection among all these different aspects, and that there is no aspect where love cannot exist and love cannot be born, basically. And so that's what we're looking for when we do readings in astrology. We use any system. We're looking for that way to embrace and to be in unconditional love no matter what. And so in that respect, any system can potentially lead us to that point. And if you find one that really turns you on and that just lights you up, by all means follow it. I believe this is a great system to do that, but not everyone uses it that way. And that's why I'm trying to put out the ways that I look at these things. One example is, as you look at a chart, and if you want to run your own chart, you can go to a lot of different places to find it for free. humandesignamerica.com/chart is one free chart creator. You can put in your birth date. The time is somewhat important, but for human design in particular, if you start with noon And if you let me know that you don't have your time, and specifically depending upon any question that you might have, I can sometimes do a little bit of correction and ask you a couple of questions to see what resonates with you, which will help me determine the most likely time that you were born if you don't know it. But you'll see in the examples that I give you that there are channels, lines. Sometimes they have red, sometimes they have black, and sometimes they have just white, which means that there's no definition there. Anything white, there's no definition. And so, sorry, my dog is wanting to play. When you have a definition in a full channel, that means both gates are defined by some heavenly body at the time that you were born, and you have that full channel, and you're with a person, whether it's a friendship, any kind of relationship, who has only one of those gates defined, then that is called a compromise. That is one of the sources for contention in any type of relationship or friendship. And, you know, there can be all kinds of great things going on, but unfortunately, we usually pay most attention to that difference, to that compromise. And it can sort of end up being the bane of our relationship, our existence in some ways. And so there's the school of thought that says you should seek people with whom you don't have such conflict or bones of contention to be in relationship with, at least long term. But we're never going to avoid them completely. And we attract these different challenges into our lives for a reason. And so for an example from my own life, I had a really challenging year last year, had a big source of anxiety. And at first, of course, I just wanted to avoid it. I wanted to get away from it. But that, once I took a step back, did not seem possible, did not seem to be for my highest good, really. And so I stuck with it. And one of the concepts that I came across at that time was leaning into my anxiety, which seems completely opposite from what you might think you should do with anxiety, right? I mean, most of you probably have that initial reaction of getting away from it, avoiding it somehow, finding yourself in a different situation. But oftentimes when we do that, we end up attracting it in just some other type of expression anyway. And so that's one reason to not necessarily avoid situations that are challenging. Once I did start leaning into it, and with the goal of maintaining my calm no matter what, maintaining that point of love, not only for others and at least their higher selves, even if I couldn't feel like I loved who they were being in that moment, but loving myself and knowing that their higher selves were always going to be someone that I could love, that situation dissipated and it really did come around. In past videos, I have also offered Vedic astrology readings to help, in particular, if you're in a challenging situation or a challenging time in your life right now, to be able to look at that and see when it might end. And sure enough, that was true for me as well. Once I accepted the possibility that this situation could be resolved in a way that didn't necessarily involve anyone apologizing to me, anyone accepting responsibility for their part in it necessarily, just me, the only person I can control, coming to a place of accepting the situation, the choices that were being made that were beyond my control, and the only things that I could do with that, which were to come to a place where I could be in a state of love no matter what. That situation really did transform for me. And even though I am still working with the same people this year and around the same people this year, it's quite a different situation. So I know that got a little bit more into Vedic astrology. I had started out a little bit more with a focus on human design, but it's the same concept. Identifying those challenging aspects, challenging combinations of duality. A lot of us just find an area, an aspect, an idea, a system, people that we love and we like, and we just try to hold on to that. And sometimes we can hold on to it so much that we try to build up a fortress around it, we fight for it, and we automatically assume that anything that tries to change it or challenge it is bad, and we push it away, avoid it, or fight it. And it's not to say that there is no bad in the world. There are people who make bad decisions, but basically what I'd like you to consider is that those harmful decisions, those harmful actions that people take always come out of the belief that there is such a thing as separation from love, and that there is a need to fight in order to get back to that place of unconditional love. In truth, in reality, in the greater reality from whence we came, there is never any need. We can always connect in our hearts, with our spirits, with our souls. We can always get back to that place of unconditional love. And one of those ways is connecting with the higher selves of those people, and at least our own higher self. We can always come back to a place of love with ourselves. So I hope that makes sense. I think I basically accomplished the just step of pointing out, what is so beautiful about this system of human design and the 64 hexagrams, those different combinations of duality. I mean, I know a lot of you might think that the Matrix is bad. And certainly if you look at the Matrix, the movie, you can see why the Matrix would be bad. And there are people who are very attached to, like I said, it's not so different from what I said before. They get very attached to a certain system, a certain way of believing that they think that that's the only way that they can maintain what they love in life, what their survival even. I mean, a lot of times people can just associate it with survival. And they fight against anything that seems to go up against that. But that is the illusion. And once you embrace the greater reality that love is all there is, it's much less likely, if not impossible, for you to ever really consciously or intentionally, do harm to anyone else. All right, so I'll invite you to check in with Gaia with me. Gaia always has some great reminders about why we chose to incarnate into these physical bodies, into this realm of duality, and what we should hope to accomplish here. And while I am channeling this for you, I always invite you to do it with me because, as we come into that place of calmness, that place of connecting with love and the greater reality of love, I think that you will find even more truth and even more messages yourselves beyond what I can offer. So take a few deep breaths and close your eyes if you'd like. So when we come to this place where we allow the breath to circulate more fully throughout our bodies, we can get more in touch with the beauty of our physical bodies. As challenging as this physical world can be sometimes we forget the miraculous nature of it. And if you have gotten into a place where you have forgotten some of the beauty and wonder of this physical world, you may have found that you've had a harder time attracting and creating the life that you really want and the life that you are meant to have in this lifetime. Only when we follow the blessings, follow the bliss, and lean into the challenges can we eventually gather the fruits of our labors. We have many wonderful metaphors in nature from Gaia for what there is to be gained from going through those challenges. Honestly, we would be bored if we didn't have any challenges in our lives. We have the metaphor of the little grain of sand or irritant that makes its way to an oyster. And that oyster cannot run away from it, cannot avoid it. It rather accepts it, takes it in, and creates a beautiful pearl with it. We have the metaphor of the grist for the mill, which is obviously a man-made structure, yet it harnesses the forces of nature, and only with that grist, that little something to grind against, basically, can we keep that mill running and gain the nourishment that is to be had from nature. And as we come to embrace and observe and see the beautiful love that runs throughout all things and beings, and as we offer up our gratitude for it, our appreciation for it, our love for it, that is when we will create more and we will be able to create miracles. And we will be able to come together with the people on this earth and from beyond this earth who can help us. We are all meant to come together. We are all meant to cooperate, to live in harmony, to communicate, and to learn from each other. Only when we do that, when we come together and we learn and we accept the differences, can we truly grow and become stronger. And it is true, there is harm in this world, and we can choose it. We can choose to go down that path of believing in the separation, believing that someone can take our good away from us. And in a moment, that is possible. But we are not, in truth, in the eternal truth, mere physical beings. We, in truth, are immortal beings, having a physical experience. And that part of us, that soul, that spirit, that immortal being, never dies, can never be harmed. And when we hold on to that truth, when we hold it in our hearts and our minds, even while someone is trying to do our physical bodies harm in any way, those people who might try to do us harm see it. And it helps them to evolve too. It helps them to let go of that idea of separation, of that idea that any harm can really be done. And it helps them to turn to more generative ways of being, more cooperative ways of living. And that is why forgiveness is so important. Those who still believe in separation and the possibility of harm are looking for models like you to show them the way, show them a different way. When we are born here, we are born into whatever paradigms have come before us. For us to find our way out of in many ways, oftentimes, when they involve belief in separation and belief in the physical being the ultimate reality. Only when we see models of unconditional love do we understand that there is another way. And all of us came here to make mistakes as well. Only when we understand that we have done something in a way that did create harm, sometimes that is our wake-up call to turn to another way as well. So all are needed. Mistakes are needed, forgiveness is needed, and models in the way of unconditional love are needed as well. And when you take a moment to get in touch with your immortal self, you open yourself to messages from beyond this physical world that will help to be those models for you as well, if you don't see them in your physical environment around you. So just open to seeing those new ways, and open to the possibility of not only forgiving others, but forgiving yourself for any mistakes you may have made, any harm you might have done to yourself. And release to Gaia that which no longer serves you. Deep breath, let it go. Even our breaths themselves are a way through duality. The in-breath, the out-breath. But if you look for those points in between, they will offer you a glimpse into eternity as well. Thank you so much for joining me. Namaste, beloveds. Please help me reach 100 subscribers this week. I'm only 3 away. Thanks also for watching, liking, sharing, and clicking the bell to be notified of future videos.